Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on this first in a series of webinars on getting involved in the SCA volunteer leadership and many other ways. Today, we'll be talking about the 2019-2020 board elections process. Before we get started, we wanna introduce our panelists today. On the call today, one second, is Heather Perry, Vice President of the Board of Directors. We've also got Christina Maynolds, Second Vice President, SCA Board of Directors. James Humpelitz, Chief Membership and Communications Officer at the SCA. And Ellie Hudson, Director of Steering and Strategy for Advocacy at the SCA. Before I hand it over to Ellie, just a couple of notes here. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to SCA News. A couple of notes on submitting questions. There's a couple of ways to do this. So during the webinar, feel free to submit questions in the questions panel, which you should see on your GoToWebinar panel if you're joining us on the web. We'll of course read those questions during the Q&A session. And during the Q&A session, if you prefer to use your audio to ask your question, feel free to click the raise hand function. There's a little hand button that you should see also in your control panel for GoToWebinar. And at the end of the session, we will have a poll. So we hope you stick around to take the poll. We're really just looking for some feedback on this webinar to see how much you learned from it, if there's anything that we can do to improve in future webinars. So yeah, definitely stick around after the Q&A to take the poll. It'll really help us with this series. So let's get started. I'm gonna hand it over to Ellie Hudson.
Thanks, Vicente. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this very exciting election already in progress. So what we're going to be focusing on today, and this is the first episode in a series throughout the next few months that will describe and inform and give a chance for our members to ask questions about the election. Our focus today is going to be on the practical aspects of the election, the timeline, including the steps that we've taken so far and where we are in the process and what's coming up. A little bit about the nominating committee and the role of the nominating committee as your representatives of the membership. The voting process, very practical, exactly what you can expect once things progress. And then finally, once the board election is concluded, what the board members would be expected to do. Over to you, James.
Thanks, Ellie. Hi, everybody. So I'm just going to quickly run through our timeline for the elections. As Ellie mentioned, we've already started some of this process, and it gives you a sense of what's coming up in the coming weeks and months. So the call for nominations actually opened on 4th of June earlier this year, and we closed that process on the 23rd. And of course handed over those nominations to the nominating committee, which we'll hear more about later on in the presentation. We're now planning to, or getting ready to announce the proposed slate. That's going to be no later than the 1st of September. That's per what's in the bylaws, although we will try and do that sooner if we can. We'll then have a window open for any nominations we receive by petition. That will close on the 30th of September, with the final ballot being announced around a week later on the 8th of October. We'll then be in full swing of the election, so we'll open on the 1st of November, close on the 30th, and look to make the announcement of the results on the 10th of December.
So this is a pretty historic election that we're having here because it's the first ever for the SCA Board of Directors since the unification of the two heritage associations. In case you didn't know how this current board came to be, it was actually the members vote for the board for both heritage associations. And so in the forming of the new board, we took 9 from each heritage board is kind of how this board was made up. So this is the first election though for the SCA. And it was really historic for us. We had 65 nominees, so a huge number of involvement from our membership, which is fantastic to see. And the other thing as well is it was great because we had nominees from all over the world. So it was a great way to just kind of learn an opportunity to talk to our membership, you know, find the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you will, from everywhere from Australia and Hong Kong and Taiwan, to Mexico and Africa. So it was a great, the amount of diversity that we got within the nominees was really awesome, and we're excited to talk to people from all over and kind of get the lowdown of the membership.
So then the role of the nominating committee was we put together a nominating committee which comprised of the President's Council, which is the President, the Vice President, Second Vice President, and the Treasurer. And then we chose also 2 past presidents, so the past president of the SCAA Heritage and the past president of the SCAE Heritage. And then we also had the Executive Director and the Deputy Executive Director to comprise the nominating committee. And so we thought that that would represent the board, which again, in turn represents its members. And we decided in that committee that we would interview all of the candidates to give everybody the fair chance. So candidates were asked to submit a questionnaire, which just comprised of questions whether you actually had the time to commit to board service, and whether you were a member. It was also important to be a member to be able to represent the membership. And then our candidates submitted a CV, and based on that, that was already, you became eligible to get an interview, and we split into teams. So everybody was interviewed by 2 members of the nominating committee, and we actually talked to 65 candidates. And we had a set of questionnaire that was the same for every single candidate, had a little bit of just talking through the CV also to give candidates the opportunity to mention things that was important to them. And we were looking for a board balance. Board balance originally came from the European and the US, but now actually we were saying, well, we were looking for competencies, financial and business acumen, strategic visioning, and also being part of the community. Questions included, have you ever volunteered for the SCA? Have you ever volunteered or been a board member before? And so we really tried to find a balance, listening to also that membership has communicated to us that you want diversity, and you want diversity also representing the community, that we also identified gaps of producing countries, people of color, and also a range of generations to really represent our membership in a proper way. The slate includes 6 directors because there's 6 spaces there to be filled, and so the slate will then, we will have selected based on the selection criteria, chosen 6 nominees on that slate to then fill the 6 spaces that we have. And then obviously the petition process for writing candidates, as just was mentioned on the last slide. James, over to you.
Thank you, Christina. So yeah, we talked a little bit there about the timeline and obviously the nominating committee. And I just want to give a quick overview then of the voting process itself. So as per the bylaws, we will be running the website, the election on the website and via a postal ballot, if that's what people would prefer. We have already found our third-party election company, a company called UK Engage, which unsurprisingly are based here in the UK, where our UK office is. And the website will facilitate the vote, but will also feature lots of extra information about the process itself. Should you need any help, you know who to contact. There's going to be, you know, reminders of the timeline and all that sort of thing as well. What I would encourage people to do is take the time that we have between now and when the election will begin in November to just review the details that we hold on file to you. So we'll be contacting you by the email address that we have associated with your membership number. And so if your membership number, your email address, sorry, has changed, then there's a good opportunity now to just review that with us. You can also find your membership number by logging into the website. So again, fairly quick and easy process just to check that number.
So just as a reminder, the actual voting won't start until November 1st. And so there's a lot of steps along the way, and making sure that we have time to communicate and ensure that everyone has a chance to review the slate and any petition candidates. Just as a reminder, I know for many of you on the call or listening to the recording, the promise of one member, one vote was a major factor in supporting the merger of SCAA and SCAE. And so this is for the first time a chance for us to see this come to reality. So for many heritage of either organization, this is potentially the opportunity to vote that would not have been possible in the heritage organization. So I think we're, on behalf of the staff, we're very excited about this. And I think that there's a lot of enthusiasm for this. And just as a little bit of a plug, this is the first episode in a series of webinars about our election and how to get involved in the SCA beyond the board. So our next webinar will take place sometime in the month of September. We're still finalizing the date based on the availability of the speakers for that webinar, but look for that online and social media, and you know, more information as it becomes available on the election, but also just emphasizing all the different ways to get involved in SCA leadership.
And so when it comes to being a board member, the board member terms are 2-year terms. So as we mentioned, the election will end December 10th, and the new board members' terms will run from January 1st of 2019 to December 31st of 2020. Always remember that your board members are elected to represent the community, and that's something that we really looked for when comprising the slate, is that we represented the membership. We heard from the membership on what they wanted to see in the boardroom, and we really tried to deliver on that and make sure that all of the voices from the community are in the room. You know, in case you're not familiar, the primary responsibilities of the board members are really to kind of live out the SCA strategic plan, and then we also have fiduciary duties as well, making sure that we're producing and sustaining an organization that is financially sustainable, that will be here 10, 20, 30 years down the line, and then living out that vision as well. So working together with the staff and the community. So with any of your board members, if you know, one of the questions that we really were looking at is, where do we see the association in 10 years? These are the conversations to be having as you see board members. You know, where's the association going to be in 3 years? I'd love to see, you know, the organization take this type of role. These are the conversations that we want to be having with the community, because when we're in the boardroom, it really is the community that we're representing, and the more that we can hear from the community and engage with them and talk to them, the better we can represent them as well. So, you know, I think it's gosh, Ellie, you can help me out with here. What's the email address for the board?
I think it's board@sca.coffee. If Julie House is on the call, she would know for sure.
And that's to reach all of the board members. So if you ever want to reach out, that's a great way to do it as well. You know, this call is a little bit about the board members and the installation of the new board, but leadership within the association is by no means limited to the board. I mean, if you've been involved with the association in any way, shape, or form, you've most likely been done so in a volunteer capacity, because the organization is really ran by volunteers, and there's so many different roles that we fill, everything from councils, committees, guilds, competitions, speakers, instructors. There's just so many ways to get involved, and that's really what the series is about. You know, when we talk about the nominations for the board, that comes to the forefront of everybody's email box. But the reality is there's so much happening before that. And so if you're looking at how do I get more involved in the association, these are really easy places to kind of start. you know, most of us have some sort of story where we started washing dishes at a competition or for a cupping room or something to that effect. And there's just so much you get from that. You know, the people and the minds that you get to be around is incredible. And we really want to make sure that we've got the best brain trust possible within the association. And so we want you to get involved in these committees, these guilds, these councils. If you don't know how, that's what this webinar series is for. So not just today, but moving forward as well, we're really going to be focusing on what's that first step. If, hey, you know, I'm a Roasters Guild member, how do I get involved in that council? Or whatever, you know, whether it be in education that you want to take a bigger role in. That's what we're really hoping to do. So the next series, the next webinar in the series is going to be meeting the slate, and then learning about more opportunities to serve, and then finally meeting the board in January as well. We really heard from our membership this year. We want to be more transparent. We want to be more engaged. We want to communicate with you more. And you know, webinars are one way that we can do it. They're not the only way, but they're definitely a way that we're going to be utilizing more. So make sure that you're always paying attention to when these webinars are coming out, because they're a good way for us to engage. And you get a little FaceTime with us.
Great, thank you very much. I wanted to open it up to the panel. Does anyone else have anything to add here before we get to the Q&A? So I see a raised hand by Rick Reinhardt there. Not to
Yeah, it looks like
volunteer you there.
he's having a little trouble.
Sorry about that. I'm appearing as a disembodied voice. I just want to take a moment to thank everybody who participated in the nominating committee, and more importantly, to thank the 65 brave souls who raised their hands to be considered for this role. It was incredibly gratifying to have the opportunity to talk to so many people who were clear in vocalizing their belief in the organization and the work of the organization. And it gives me a tremendous sense of optimism going forward that the SCA will continue to do great work in the world through the efforts of all these volunteer leaders. So many, many thanks again, and I look forward to hearing from more of you as we go forward, and to doing our best to activate the strategic plan and achieve the vision of the organization.
Excellent, thank you, Rick. So we'll open it up now to Q&A. I'm going to go back actually to the slide with the elections process timeline here. I think this is a really useful slide. We had a question earlier that that later was answered, and that is when the first question was, when will the slate be submitted to members? And of course, that'll be done according to our bylaws by September the 1st. We have a second question here from Alex. Alex asks, does each company individual member get a vote? I'll hand that over to James Humpelitz, please.
Thanks, Vicente, and thanks for the question. Company individual members are not eligible to vote in the election. So this will just be if you're an individual member, so that would be a barista, roaster, technician, or other individual professional, or if you're the primary account holder of a company membership, so the small, medium, large, and corporate company categories. If you're listed as a company individual member, you do get to take advantage of the other benefits, but not the eligibility to vote in the board election.
Excellent. Thank you, James, and thank you, Alex, for the question. As a reminder, everyone, we've got two ways to ask questions here. We've got a questions panel. Feel free to submit your question by typing it into the questions panel, or if you'd like to use your audio to ask your question, feel free to click the raise hand option. Alex has another question here. Sure, 1 second, let me unmute you. Go ahead, Alex. Alex, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. All right, I think you might be having audio problems, Alex, so I'm gonna go ahead and mute you again. If you wanna try to fix your audio or submit your question via the questions panel, we'll be happy to answer it there. We've got a question here from Selton. The question is, through the proposed slate, do we feel that we address the issues found in the demographic information about the board? I'll hand this over to Heather. I think this is a topic that you covered earlier. I'll repeat the question here. The question from Selton is, through the proposed slate, does the nominating committee feel that that it's addressed the issues found in the demographic information about the board?
Yeah, I think the membership is going to be really happy with the slate. I do think, we took what we told the membership. There's a link, maybe somebody can put it up first. There's a link where Paul had put out as president, kind of the call for nominees and what we were looking for. And the membership delivered in putting nominees up. And the nominating committee really made it a priority to make sure that we filled all of our gaps, from generational gaps, demographic gaps, person of color gaps. We really hit all of those. And so along with finding people who have so much to offer and come from such different areas, I think the membership, we really set out to come up with a slate that the membership was excited about and could get behind. It could feel like, all right, the board heard us, and that's what we tried to deliver on. So I do believe so. We did not take our mission lightly.
Excellent. Thank you, Heather. Selton says, got it. Anyone have anything to add to that? By the way, we'll share here the link that Heather just mentioned. I'll share it in the chat window in just a minute. Okay, we've got here the question from Alex. Okay, if an AST, if an authorized SCA trainer is also the main contact of a company membership, can they transfer their other vote to someone else? James?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Vicente. Thank you for the question. No, it's not possible to transfer your vote to another person. So it's just the named contact. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to take this opportunity in the next weeks and months to get in touch with us or check by logging in on the website, you can find out who that named contact is. And if you need to make any changes, if people have moved on or email addresses have changed or anything, please let us know so we can fix that for you.
Excellent, thank you, James. Alexis, thank you. I'm just looking through here to make sure that I haven't missed anyone's hand up. All right, so I'd like to open this question up for the panel. This is not something that anyone submitted, of course. If anyone's got any questions, please submit it through the questions panel. Feel free to raise your hand. A question for the panel about the board election. So one of the things that that was mentioned during this webinar is that this is the first board election since the unification of the SCAA and SCAE. And I wanted to open it up to everyone on the panel just to get if anyone has any further questions about or further thoughts about the significance of this, of a board election. Why is it important for an SCA member to get involved in vote and take part in this process? That's one question. Another is, what is the significance of the 65? We received 65 nominations from folks from all over the world. What does that mean, and how is that different from maybe past elections in the heritage organizations? Christina, I was wondering if you might have some thoughts on that.
I do. Thank you. I believe that the heritage associations were very different, and we were, of course, wondering how much interest we would have and how much members wanted to get involved. And we were happy, very happy that so many people did want to get involved and also get involved on a leadership way, because obviously through issues that we've had through the merger, people have been very vocal about where we're going and what we're doing, and we hoped that people would want to get involved, and we're then very happy to see that so many people did. And also one of the questions that we had was, where do you see the association 10 years? And we got fascinating answers. So I will say that, so what Rick was saying, it was hugely helpful to have so much interaction with so many members and people who want to get involved, because we got so much valuable insight and also so much spirit. And I do think that that is very unique, and we are very happy that also the first board after the merger we've had sparked such interest. So I think we're very happy, and we were very privileged to have so many applicants, and also after the merger. So I think we can't really compare with the heritage associations, and I think I speak for the entire leadership of the SCA when we say we feel honored and very happy to have had so much interest.
That's excellent. The as a reminder, this was in the original nominations announcement. Our nominating committee was formed by Paul Stack, president of the board of directors, Heather Perry, vice president, Christina Maynol, second vice president, Cosimo Libardo was on there, Ben Pitts, Rick Reinhardt, and Yanis Apostolopoulos. And so I wanted to ask you, Heather, I understand, as Christina just mentioned, that process of reaching out to every single one of the 65 nominees and conducting an interview, I understand that process was quite interesting. I wanted to know, from your perspective, what were some of the things that surprised you, maybe some of the things that you learned from it that maybe you weren't expecting to find out?
I thought it was great how we really heard the same theme from almost all of our candidates when talking about, what they most valued about the association. We heard the word community over and over and over, and that's really what this organization is. It's about the community, it's about the people, and I think it was just a great kind of reminder of the platform and the foundation of what this association is and why we all get together. There's great things on what we're doing in science and research, what we're doing with sustainability, protecting the green coffee supply. But why you're part of this organization is because you want to be part of the community. It's the people. It's a people organization. Coffee's a people. It's a people thing. So I think that was really great to hear, and I think that resonated with everybody. And it was great to hear that theme continuous. The other thing that surprised me is how many people I would say over half of our nominees were put up by other people. And they were like, wow, who nominated me? And so it was great to see people putting their friends out there. Hey, I'll put my friend's name in. And I thought that was awesome, because I think it's people who would not have normally nominated themselves. And so that was really great as well, to get people who are not necessarily going to put themselves forward, but who were put forward and had so much to offer. And so I think we got to talk to people who normally we wouldn't have necessarily. So that was also really nice.
That's great. That's great. Ellie, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit. Obviously, this will be a topic for future webinars. And part of the idea or the idea behind this series is really to communicate to members about the many ways that they can get involved in the association's volunteer leadership. One of the things that I didn't know before I came to work for the SCA, or that I didn't realize really, was how much of what the association does is really led by volunteers. Right? Can you talk to us through that? Like, let's talk about the basics here. What are the kinds of, we pointed out some of the groups that we have that are volunteer leadership. What's their role? How do they get chosen? And really, what is how how much do they do for the association in terms of, what the association's output?
Thanks, Vicente. Yeah, I'd love to talk about this. For me, it's personal, as I used to work for member companies and came to my relationship with the SCA through volunteering, first in the competitions and in the guilds, and then ultimately joining the board, and then finally joining the staff. And that process for me was a process of discovery, but also very much having access to other leaders in the industry. At the time, I was in my mid-20s, and being able to just be around people that had established businesses and had done things like strategic planning, it was something that was kind of new to me at the time. And that piece of it, I mean, all of the volunteer-led leadership, it flows back into our strategic plan. And that's really, whether it's the guilds or the competitions or the councils, whether that's sustainability council or research advisory, it's all toward executing those commitments that we've made in our strategic plan. And so I think with looking at specifics, like what do they actually do, that that plan outlines it really well. And of course, it's being updated constantly. And I think there's a really healthy blend of tactical work, things that committees tend to do. So doing things. So I work with a task force right now focused on SCA's equity, diversity, and inclusion commitments. And one of the things that we're working through is the areas of the organization that need attention. One project we have going on right now is carrying forward the work developed by the Event Site Criteria Ad Hoc Committee. So there's some strategy involved in that, but there's also a lot of tactical work that it's just really sitting down and writing an assessment or interviewing people, and it's all flowing up into that strategic objective that helps us pursue our vision. And when it all works together, we achieve that, and I think that's very inspiring. And I think it's different for different people. We have many people involved in different areas of the volunteer leadership that have gifts of strategic thinking and strategic execution, either that they have developed in their organization or just supreme talent, and freely give of that to improve SCA's ability to pursue our strategic plan. But I think that it's also, this is a member and community organization. Like, we are the community. And what we do as the SCA is really help facilitate the connection of different members of the community throughout the world in a neutral way, in a way that is credible and really helps people achieve what they're trying to do in their businesses. And that's really what it's all about.
That's great. Thank you, Ellie. And along those lines, James, I wanted to see if you could maybe speak to us a little bit about some of the volunteer leadership groups that exist in the organization that many folks may not be aware are there. You're our chief membership and communications officer. You've got your own an advisory council that advises you on matters that relate to your center. Can you talk to us a little bit about other advisory councils for other centers and other volunteer leadership groups that maybe some members may not be aware that they exist?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Vicente. Well, as you mentioned, we have a series of advisory councils that operate somewhere between the board of directors and the staff in the two offices. And they come in sort of all different sizes and have different remits, but essentially cover the essential work that the association does. So we have events, we have education, we have the membership, as you mentioned, research, sustainability, and others such as Ellie mentioning there, the ED&I task force. But there's a lot more volunteer opportunity, sort of as you go deeper into the association. As many people on the call, I'm sure, will know and relate to, there's a whole host of volunteer opportunities at our events that we run throughout the year and around the world. The two trade shows, the World of Coffee and, of course, SCA Expo, two prime examples where without the volunteers, we would not be able to perform and put on such a successful event year on year. And you know, in accompaniment to that, we then have a series of volunteer groups that operate on a more localized level, be it through a guild, the Barista Guild, the Roaster Guild, the Technicians Guild, where we have numerous volunteer positions where you can, you know, sort of take a real active role in what your guild and representatives are doing and how that might serve you. And then we also have national chapters who currently we're up to around 34 national chapters all over the world. We have a series of volunteer positions there. Some of those are elected, some again support the local competitions when we run national championships that eventually go on to compete at the Worlds. So there really is, you know, an endless number of opportunities for people to be involved in. And we encourage, even if you're remotely interested, find out more. You can find out more on the website. You can contact us at membership@sca.coffee or talk to your guild representatives or talk to your local chapter, because you know it doesn't have to be a specific role that maybe you're elected to or that you perform, but just showing up, rolling up your sleeves and saying I want to help is a great ethic to have. And let's not forget that the two heritage associations were born out of that exact attitude. We didn't always have paid staff. We're entirely volunteer-led to begin with. So I'd encourage everybody to think how they might like to be more involved if they want to be.
Excellent. Thank you, James.
Thanks.
Okay, all right, everybody. So just one more reminder, we've got the questions panel here. I haven't seen any questions come in, so if there's anything that maybe we didn't cover in this presentation, maybe you feel it's something we might cover in a future presentation, but you're curious about, feel free to submit it now. If you, of course, if you have any comments as well.
Should we launch the poll?
Yeah, shall we do that?
Yeah, I think so. If there are no more questions, but like Vicente was saying, there's lots of options. Maybe, Vicente, do you want to put that slide toward the end that has the contact information up, and then I'll launch the poll? There we go. All righty. All right, so this is anonymous. So if there's something, we won't be able to follow up with individuals, first of all. So, but this is really just the feedback for us on how we did today in terms of anticipating questions that might come from the community and addressing them. All right, so about 30% of attendees have voted. I'm going to keep it open because it's climbing. Up to about 60%, 63. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. You can stick around and see the results if you'd like. Okay, that's really helpful feedback. Those of you that responded unsure or yes, I'm still unsure about some things, please do get in touch with us and, you know, via the email addresses on your screens, and we'll be happy to address your questions.
Of course, we should add, of course, going back to the, of course, we've got the elections at SCA.coffee, elections information and voter information. If you're unsure, once we get to the voting, if you're unsure of your membership number or you need other information about your membership, feel free to email us at membership@sca.coffee. Going back to the timeline, I'm not sure if, but just so that we're clear about the how the election opens, and every single point of this timeline, if you're an SCA member, you will receive emails from the SCA when it's time, when the slate is announced. We'll put up we'll send out an email, and of course we'll put it up on our website and on social media, and we'll make sure that everyone's informed via email and various other channels of the various steps in this timeline. And so, and along with those emails, we'll have instructions for how to fill out, how to vote, how to access the website. If you need a paper ballot, there will also be instructions for how to do that. So along the way, there will be instructions for how to do each one of these steps. Thanks everybody for filling out the poll. I wanted to, one more time to our panel, anyone have anything else to add before we close?
We'll see you in a couple weeks for episode 2. Thanks for coming.
Great. Thanks everybody.
Thanks.